My name is Grace Mercer, and the night my husband served me divorce papers, he looked me in the eye and told me I had built nothing. Not the law degree I paid for with deployment pay, not the rent I covered while he studied for exams, not the suits, the bar fees, the late-night meals, or the 7 years of holidays I spent alone so he could become the kind of man who now felt ashamed to stand beside me. He called my Army career simple. He called my sacrifices embarrassing. Then he asked the court to believe I had contributed nothing to his success. But a soldier learns to keep records, bank transfers, signed promises, deployment orders, every receipt he thought I had forgotten. And by the time I walked into that courtroom, the husband who tried to erase me was about to learn that truth does not need to shout when it has evidence. My husband served me divorce papers at our dining room table, right between the crystal glasses I had bought with deployment pay and the silver pen he used to sign his first law school application. He did not look sad. He did not look nervous. He looked relieved. Nathan Reed slid the folder toward me with 2 fingers, as if touching it too long might contaminate him, then leaned back in his chair and straightened the cuff of a shirt that cost more than my first month of basic allowance. "I'm done pretending this marriage still fits my life," he said. I stared at the folder. The word dissolution sat on the first page in cold black letters. For 7 years, I had paid the bills while Nathan built the career he now used to look down on me. I had deployed twice, taken hazardous duty assignments, worked nights, missed birthdays, eaten holiday meals alone in temporary housing, and sent money home every month because he said law school was our future. Our future, that was the word he used back then. Now he was calling it his future. When I didn't cry, he frowned. "You can stop trying to look brave, Grace," he said. "This doesn't have to be ugly. You leave with what's reasonable, and I move on." "What's reasonable?" I asked. He gave a small laugh. "You didn't build any of this." The room went quiet in a way I still remember. Not because there was no sound. There was. The refrigerator hummed. Rain tapped the windows. A car rolled past outside. But inside me, something went completely still. Nathan tapped the folder. "My attorney has already prepared everything. The house is primarily tied to my income. The retirement accounts are separate. The professional network, the firm partnership track, the social circle, that's mine. And before you bring up your Army salary, Grace, let's be honest, you were just keeping a job. Just keeping a job." I looked down at my hands. There was a faint scar across my left knuckle from a field repair in Germany. A pale line on my wrist from a cargo door that slammed during a storm in Kuwait. My nails were short because they had always needed to be short. Nathan used to hold those same hands and tell me they were the reason he had a chance. Now he could barely look at them. Then he said the sentence that finally broke whatever part of me was still trying to protect him. "Your simplicity embarrasses me. You don't belong in the life I'm building." I did not answer right away. I only reached for the folder, opened it, and read the first page. His petition claimed I had made no meaningful contribution to his career. It claimed our marriage had become unequal because I lacked ambition. It claimed I had benefited from his success without helping create it. The man I had carried through law school had filed a legal document saying I was dead weight. When I looked back up, Nathan was watching me carefully, waiting for tears, waiting for begging, waiting for the kind of collapse that would make him feel powerful. Instead, I asked one question. Did you tell your lawyer about the note? His expression changed by less than an inch. But I saw it. What note? He said. I closed the folder. The one you signed in your second year. For the first time that night, Nathan stopped looking relieved. I stood, walked to the kitchen counter, picked up my keys, and turned back to him. You always said I kept too many records? He forced a smile. Grace, don't be dramatic. I opened the front door. I'm not being dramatic. Nathan, I'm being organized. The next morning, I woke up on my sister's couch with my phone buzzing beside my face. 7 missed calls from Nathan. 3 from a number I did not recognize. 1 voicemail from his attorney. And 1 text from Nathan that said, "We need to talk before you do something stupid." But it was already too late. Because while Nathan had spent 7 years forgetting everything I sacrificed, I had spent 7 years saving every receipt. My name is Grace Callahan Reed, though by the end of this story, I would take my name back. Before the marriage, before the courthouse, before the polished shoes and marble lobbies and expensive suits, Nathan was a 26-year-old man with a used laptop, a stack of LSAT prep books, and a dream so heavy he could barely carry it. I met him at a community legal aid fundraiser near Fort Jackson. I was a young communications officer then, still learning how to stand still in dress uniform without feeling like a kid pretending to be important. Nathan was volunteering at the check-in table. His tie was crooked. His shoes were scuffed. He smiled at me like he had just found the only honest person in the room. "You look like someone who knows how to fix a crisis," he said. "I work radios," I told him. "People only notice us when everything breaks." He laughed. I liked that laugh. Back then, Nathan did not talk about status. He talked about justice. He said he wanted to become the kind of lawyer who helped families keep their homes, soldiers keep their benefits, and kids get a fair chance. He said his father had died with medical bills stacked on the kitchen counter and no one in a suit willing to explain what the papers meant. I believed him. For the first year, we were simple in the best way. Cheap dinners, long walks, video calls when I was on training rotations, a shared calendar full of test dates and duty schedules. He would study at my tiny kitchen table while I packed gear for the field. He asked me to marry him in a parking lot outside a diner because he said he could not afford a ring yet, but could not wait another day to promise me his life. I said yes. 3 months later, his law school acceptance arrived. I can still see him standing in our apartment hallway, holding the envelope like it was a newborn child. "I got in," he whispered. I threw my arms around him so hard we nearly fell into the coat rack. Then he pulled back, and the joy on his face cracked. "Grace," he said, "I don't know how we pay for this." That was the first time I said the sentence that would shape the next 7 years of my life. "We'll figure it out. Not you, not me. The first tuition deposit came from my savings. The next came from a re-enlistment bonus I had planned to use for a reliable car. His books went on my credit card. His bar prep course was paid for by a transfer from my checking account labeled, very neatly, "Bar Review, Nathan." When rent went up, I volunteered for additional field training pay. When he needed a quiet place to study, I picked up extra duty and stayed away from the apartment on weekends so he could have silence. When he called crying after his first semester because he had failed a practice exam, I sat in a freezing communications trailer at midnight and kept my voice soft. "You are not quitting," I told him. Not after everything we've already done. He said, "I don't deserve you." I said, "Then become someone who does." In his second year, the money got worse. A scholarship he expected did not come through. His car needed repairs. The school changed a fee schedule. One afternoon, he sat across from me with both hands in his hair and said, "I can't keep asking you for this." I went to a legal clinic on base and asked how to document a private loan between spouses. The captain behind the desk looked at me over her glasses. "You trust him?" she asked. "With my life," I said. She paused just long enough that I remember it. "Then write it down anyway." So we did. A promissory note for $52,000. Tuition support, exam fees, emergency living expenses. Nathan signed it in blue ink at our kitchen table. A notary stamped it 2 days later. He kissed the top of my head and said, "I hate that we need this." I said, "It's just paperwork." He said, "No, it's proof that you believed in me when no one else did." I put the original copy in a fireproof lockbox with my military records, my deployment orders, and the letters he wrote me during training. For years, I never touched it, because I thought love meant you would never need proof. That is one of the most expensive lessons a woman can learn. Law school turned Nathan into a different version of himself slowly enough that I could make excuses for every piece. At first, it was just exhaustion. Then it was networking. Then it was dinners with classmates I was not invited to because they wouldn't understand Army humor. Then it was firm receptions where he asked me not to wear my uniform because civilian formal is more appropriate. I bought a Navy dress and stood beside him while partners shook his hand and asked what I did. "I'm in the Army," I said. Nathan would quickly add, "Communication side, very technical. She keeps things running." Keeps things running? Not officer. Not leader. Not the woman paying half the room's future. Just someone who kept things running. When he graduated, I cried harder than he did. I stood in the back because his mother had taken the front row seat he promised me. I watched him cross the stage, tall and shining, while everyone applauded. I was wearing the same dress I had worn to 3 previous events because the clothing money had gone to his bar fees. After the ceremony, he found me near the side doors and hugged me tightly. "We did it," he whispered. For a few seconds, I believed him. Then he passed the bar. Then he got hired by Bellamy, Cross & Weller, one of the most prestigious family law firms in the state. Then his suits changed. His watch changed. His vocabulary changed. Suddenly, people were not kind or unkind. They were useful or irrelevant. Homes were not homes. They were assets. Friends were not friends. They were contacts. And I was no longer his partner. I became a complication. At firm dinners, he corrected me in front of people. "Grace means enlisted housing," he once said with a laugh when I mentioned temporary quarters overseas. I was not enlisted, but I did not correct him because the senior partner's wife was already smiling at me like I had arrived with mud on my shoes. Another night, after I told a story about repairing a failed field relay during a storm, Nathan touched my elbow under the table hard enough to hurt. "Maybe not the war stories," he whispered. On the drive home, I stared out the window. "You used to like my stories," I said. He sighed. "I used to be younger." That was how he apologized now, by making me feel foolish for remembering who he had been. The first time I heard Vanessa Lark's name, it was midnight. Nathan's phone lit up on the nightstand. Vanessa L. The message preview said, "You looked good tonight. Too good for that room." I watched the screen go dark. In the morning, I asked him who she was. He smiled too quickly. "Associate at the firm. Don't start." I didn't start anything. You're doing that thing where you turn military suspicion into a marriage problem. I wanted to say that suspicion had kept people alive in places where he had never heard incoming fire. Instead, I said nothing. Silence became my uniform at home. I wore it when he stayed late. I wore it when perfume that was not mine lingered on his collar. I wore it when he began taking calls in the garage. I wore it when he transferred money from one account to another and told me it was tax planning. I wore it when he stopped saying "we." The week before he filed for divorce, he took me to dinner at a private club. I thought maybe, foolishly, that he was trying. I wore the navy dress again. He looked at it, then looked away. Vanessa was there, not accidentally. She stood when we approached, slim and polished in a cream blazer, with the relaxed confidence of a woman who had already been promised something that belonged to someone else. "Grace," Nathan said, "this is Vanessa. She's been helping me think through the next phase." The next phase? I shook her hand. Her palm was cool. Her smile was practiced. "I've heard so much about you," she said. I wondered which version she had heard. The loyal wife? The simple soldier? The embarrassing obstacle? During dinner, Vanessa talked about judicial conferences, donor circles, vacation homes, and a world where every table had a waiting list. Nathan leaned toward her in a way he had stopped leaning toward me. When the waiter asked about dessert, Vanessa laughed and said, "I don't know how you military spouses do it. All that moving around, it must make it hard to build anything real." Nathan did not defend me. He looked at his wine and smiled. That smile hurt more than her words. In the car afterward, I said, "Are you involved with her?" He gripped the steering wheel. "Don't make this ugly." That wasn't an answer. He pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. "You want an answer? Fine. Vanessa understands where my life is going. You remind me of where I started." I sat very still. He opened his door, then paused. "And Grace, your simplicity disgusts me." He went inside. I stayed in the car until the porch light shut off. I did not cry then. The tears came later, in the laundry room, while I folded his white shirts and realized I could not remember the last time he had washed one of my uniforms. 3 days later, the divorce papers arrived. And 3 days after that, I sat across from an attorney named Celia Morgan in a small office that smelled like coffee, paper, and rain. Celia had silver hair, sharp eyes, and the calm expression of a woman who had watched arrogant men underestimate patient wives for 20 years. She read Nathan's petition without speaking. I watched her eyebrows rise once. Only once. When she finished, she closed the folder. "He says you made no meaningful contribution to the marital estate." "Yes." "He says his earning potential is separate because it resulted from his personal talent and effort." "Yes." "He wants the house, most of the investment account, no spousal support, and for each party to keep debts in their own name." "Yes." Celia leaned back. "And what do you have?" I placed my backpack on the floor, unzipped it, and began setting folders on her desk. Bank records, wire confirmations, LES statements, deployment orders, receipts, tax filings, emails, the promissory note. Celia watched the pile grow. Then she looked at me differently. Not with pity, with respect. How long have you had all this? Since the beginning. Why? I thought about the captain at the legal clinic asking if I trusted him. Because the Army taught me that if it matters, you document it. Celia opened the folder marked Education Support. The first page was a spreadsheet I had made the night before. Date, amount, purpose, source account, supporting document. She flipped through it silently. "Grace," she said at last, "this is not a divorce defense." My stomach dropped. "It's not." "No." She looked up. "It's a counterattack." For the next month, my life became paper. Every night after work, I sat on my sister's couch and built the history Nathan had tried to erase. There was the transfer for his first semester tuition, $11,800. The check for his books, $1,247.63. The payment for bar review, $3,950. The emergency transfer when his car broke down before finals, $2,400. Rent payments made from my account during his unpaid internships. Health insurance premiums, moving costs, professional clothing, exam fees, networking dinners he said were necessary. 1,000 small sacrifices that had seemed like marriage at the time. Celia also subpoenaed records. That was when we found the transfer. $139,000 moved from a marital investment account into an entity connected to Vanessa Lark 3 months before Nathan filed for divorce. The memo line read, "Strategic Consulting." Celia stared at the bank record and said a word I had never heard her use before. Well, one word. But it carried a whole courtroom inside it. Nathan called me that night. I did not answer. He called again. I let it ring. Then he texted, "You're making a mistake. Courts don't reward bitterness." I typed one sentence back. "Courts reward evidence." He did not reply. The hearing took place on a Tuesday morning under a sky so bright it felt disrespectful. I wore my dress uniform. Not because I wanted drama, because Nathan's petition had made my service part of the case. He had called it small. He had called it irrelevant. He had called it proof that I did not belong in his world. So I wore the truth. The courthouse hallway smelled like floor polish and old paper. Nathan stood near the courtroom doors in a charcoal suit, Vanessa beside him in cream. Of course. She looked at my uniform, then whispered something to him. He smirked. I almost smiled. Not because I was happy, because he still thought the uniform was the weakness. Celia touched my arm. Ready?